Oh, you know what it is. We are in the Mecca, New York City. All hands on deck for another betting preview. This, the UFC 295 edition, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. And we got some heavy hitters today. Jon Anik alongside Daniel Cormier and Chael Sonnen. What do we owe the pleasure,
Great
sir?
to see both of you. Hey, and nice shirts, by the way, huh? We went all out for this.
Yeah, we all dressed alike. It's like going to the Sadie Hawkins dance in high school.
We got our nice Travis Matthew DraftKings polos.
What?
And
how's it like the Sadie Hawkins dance? What's he doing? The Sadie Hawkins where the girl has to ask you, how is this anything like the Sadie Hawkins
you get
dance?
dressed alike at the Sadie Hawkins
the Sadie
dance.
Hawkins
Yeah.
dance.
She picks the outfit,
I apologize.
which is not that good.
Mr. Anik, I'm sorry for
no,
the
it's
interruption.
quite all right.
by
So we are
DC.
in New York City, of course, getting ready for UFC 295 at Madison Square Garden. And a little tight quarters here today, but we kind of like the intimacy, and we're going to get right into this main event. Yuri Prochazka taking on Alex Pereira for the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. DraftKings Sportsbook, for all of its great things, they are always first. And in this case, Johnny Avello, our great director of the Racing Sportsbook, they were first to open this price on Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka. Now, Yuri opened as a small favorite, but Alex Pereira was bet up as high as minus 145. So right now, as it stands, Alex Pereira, albeit slightly, is still the favorite. Your thoughts on that movement and ultimately the betting line as it stands right now?
A bit surprising that he was the favorite, considering Yuri Prochazka never lost the championship, and he won that fight against Glover Teixeira in impressive fashion, doing something we didn't expect. We always thought that if he beat Glover, it would be by knockout. He submitted him to become the UFC Light Heavyweight Champion, didn't lose the belt. Now, Alex has looked good since going up to 205, and by beating Jan Blachowicz, maybe that is what gives the general public the idea that he is now a true light heavyweight and that he has the skill set to be the guy that's as dangerous as Yuri Prochazka. So a bit surprising, but if Johnny set the line as that, you got to understand that it's a guy with a lot of knowledge.
Sure.
And you got to trust it.
And when you're going 5 rounds, guys, you are talking about a different sport. I mean, try to relate that to a football game. If it was a Super Bowl and all of a sudden I tell you it's 3 quarters, it might change who you pick. Or if I tell you it's going to be 7 quarters, it might change who you pick. The reason I bring that up, 5 rounds is so relevant. It's now not just about who's better than who. It's also who's tougher, who can dig deeper, who's in better shape. Yuri has been out for a meaningful amount of time. Frankly, we don't know how much. We were told at one point it was the worst shoulder injury ever seen. I'm hoping that just somebody was wrong. I'm hoping it was a misdiagnosis, but that's never been cleared up. So how much has he been in the gym to step back into this environment? It's a question for me. And Pereira, world champion or not, main eventer or not, returning to the Garden or not, has never gone 25 full minutes.
Right.
And I just think it's relevant.
All of those. Yuri Prochazka essentially staring at a 17-month layoff, and it seems as though that has been reflected in the price here. I wanted to ask you about Glover Teixeira in all of this. Has history with Yuri Prochazka. I'm not sure any man has had more of an influence on Alex Pereira's MMA success than Glover. How do you think his influence factors into the game plan and potentially the fight here for Alex Pereira?
Well, I love that you asked the question because that's the first time I've heard this come up. I mean, Pereira was in the corner when Glover, his mentor and hero and coach, got stopped. And now they're reversing roles, and Glover will be in the corner as the student goes out there and fights him. I mean, I just love that you brought that up because it's so significant. How bad does a guy want something? What is his drive? What is the motivation? Nothing is stronger than having the guy that you look up to telling you good job.
Right.
There is nothing. And we'll know that as young men, it didn't matter when we were 9 years old or 40 years old. That's why we got in this, and that's why we stayed in it. And I think it's a very big deal that Glover Teixeira is there, not to mention the intimate knowledge. Of course, that's helpful.
Some other things I just want to get to from a betting perspective. We have seen some action come in on this fight to go more than a round and a half. It seems like some bettors believe that, Alex Pereira historically has maybe felt things out a little bit early on. Are you expectant, without revealing your hand totally, that we're going to get a long fight here Saturday night?
I do believe that. I believe that these two guys are so evenly matched that they're going to have to take some time to figure out what's going to be the fight, how the fight's going to play out. What dance are we going to do tonight inside the octagon? When you look and watch Yuri Prochazka, the last time we saw him was against Teixeira. He started very quickly, but he started to fade a little bit down the stretch, and that's when Glover started to go away from him in terms of the fight. For Alex Pereira, I always say Pereira. They were saying Pereira. It's like a very difficult name because there are so many different ways people say it. But for Pereira, he's a counter guy. He's very good at taking his time, and that's from kickboxing. He kickboxes at a super high level. He's never going to rush. So I can't imagine we're going to see anything like we may see at heavyweight, where you got 2 bangers that are going to go out there and try to end the fight quickly. I think we're going to have a little bit of a long fight, but I believe that it'll be fun for as long as it lasts, because I believe these two are just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I mean, I feel like it's the olden days of striker versus grappler. It's very clear in my mind that Prochazka's got to get him to the ground.
Yeah.
I'm just not confident that he can't do that very thing. I think doing it over the course of 5 rounds is difficult for anybody, but this is a really interesting match.
It's so crazy, though, to think that it was Glover that needed to get him down. Now he's in a position where for him to find success, you got to think he has to mix up takedowns because we know how great a striker Prochazka is.
Right.
But he's going to have to use all his skills against this guy.
DraftKings Sportsbook also taking some action right now on Yuri Prochazka by submission. He can be had at plus 800, so perhaps you see some value on that. We will get predictions from the fellas in some part on the main event coming up later, but let us transition to this heavyweight co-main event. Because even though Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic are not walking through that door, this to me seems like as relevant a heavyweight fight as we can put together, and similarly taking two-way action just like the main event. Right now, Tom Aspinall, slight favorite, minus 122. The comeback on Sergey Pavlovich, plus 102. Your thoughts?
You know, I've made these comments time and time again about wanting something, believing you want something, and getting something different, and it's kind of okay. Like, that thing you get is okay. I go back to being a kid and wanting a Nintendo. I got a Sega. Hey, the Sega worked out for me. I was the only kid in the neighborhood with it. That's what's happening this weekend. We wanted Jon Jones versus Stipe, the big, shiny thing. But what we are getting is a great heavyweight title fight between two young guys in their prime, both looking to make a mark. But the way that I hear people talk of Tom Aspinall, it was like going all the way back to Jon Jones. Remember those stories of Jon Jones out of Jackson's before he became the man?
Yep.
You knew, like, wow, this guy must be special. Can he live up to this? That is what's happening with Aspinall right now, but he has a very tough Sergey Pavlovich to get through first.
Yeah, and I think you might even be referring to Michael Bisping. I mean, he is really... Michael Bisping's not big on the compliments, so when he comes out and he puts a guy over to the degree that he is Tom, I listen. It means something to me. I assume that Bisping maybe popped in the training room and saw some of these stories. I would like to tell you this. This is quite a riddle, guys. So this is for the interim championship, but if we're to take the information that we've been given, it's not a number one contenders fight in that Stipe, who still has the bout agreement against the champion, is the number one contender. We're also told that both Jon and Stipe are going to retire regardless of outcome.
That's so crazy.
If the winner of Tom and Sergey is in the front row, thinking they're going to get a face-off, and the information that we're told is true, which is Jon or Stipe who wins retires, the interim champion becomes the undisputed champion. And I'm only bringing that to you guys because this is for the undisputed championship.
Yes, it is. Right.
If the math that I just told you is true, then this is for the undisputed championship.
And it feels very much like the winner of this fight is going to be elevated and promoted at some point in time. So I think that's a valuable point. Real quick, Chael, back to you on this. Tom Aspinall open minus 135.
Yep.
Most of the action has been on Sergey Pavlovich, and some people, certainly a lot of people putting their money down, were surprised that they could get a plus number next to Pavlovich just given the tear that he's been on.
I was in my studio, John, when this fight got announced, and I instantly went to DraftKings, and I was stunned. And I even said to the audience, I said, I think this is a mistake. Aspinall's the favorite. It was like a negative 140 to plus 125. It was very, very close. I said, I do not predict for you guys that that's going to last. By the time that dropped, my comment section was telling me that I'm wrong. I just assumed I was, because I also thought that Sergey would be the favorite. I went back. I was never wrong. It has never flip-flopped. Sergey never passed him up, not even for 1 single second. That's a surprise to me. Sergey has been 6 up, 6 down, all inside of the first round. I mean, this is like old-school Mike Tyson versus Tom, who's 1-1 in his last 2, and it took 2 years to get those 2. It's a big surprise, but somebody's seeing something in Tom, DC.
Somebody's seeing something in Tom, and also I think where you're getting a little bit of that reluctance is because we don't see Sergey long. We don't know how Sergey's going to withhold himself over the course of a long fight if he gets pushed through the first couple rounds. Because guess what? The last time we saw him fight a long fight, Alistair Overeem got the best of him.
Right.
Because he seemed to tire, he seemed to fatigue. Now, that was a long time ago. I trained with this man. He was a baby back then. He is not the same guy. But for him to get 6 wins, look, you don't get to go to work for 5 minutes every time. That's what he has made his norm. 5 minutes inside the octagon, dude gets his check, goes back to Russia.
Yep.
It's unbelievable what he has done, but to see him as the underdog is a bit surprising.
So Pavlovich has 6 inches in reach, even though he is the smaller man here. Chael, let me ask you this. Sergey Pavlovich was training for this date as the backup.
Yep.
Tom Aspinall was not. Now, perhaps we'll know more when we sit down with him in our fighter meeting as to what he was doing in terms of the preparation for this specific date. But do you factor that into your handicap? Because for me, as a bet, how do you not?
Yeah, absolutely. Every single time that we've seen this, I can go back 2 weeks ago to Volkanovski. I can go back 2 weeks ago to Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman and Chimaev. DraftKings has put out fantasy odds for that for 5 years. I don't understand what would be different now. Well, the one answer, it was short notice. That's the answer. This is the only time that DraftKings let Chimaev take the jump on Usman was the short notice. Yes, it absolutely matters, and I feel as though somebody is missing that. I would like to go to DC's point when he's talking about 6 finishes in a row and how that can be detrimental. I maintain to this day the number one problem that Ronda Rousey had against Holly Holm wasn't that head kick. It wasn't the travel and fatigue. It was the fact that those other opponents got out of there so quickly. When you get used to that, it is a problem. When you find yourself in a match that's harder than you thought it was going to be, that is where things unravel, and it could be a real big problem for Pavlich. Getting people out of there that quickly can come back and bite you.
DC is calling the fight with me, so he can't give a hard prediction on the fight. Do you have a prediction on the heavyweight co-main event?
Yes, and you know what? I went on and on. I'll start with the co-main event, the big boys here. I went on and on about how I was surprised that Tom is the favorite, but I have Tom. I just didn't think other people would see it that way. I do have him. I like that he's got a plan. I like the strategy they laid out to get there, whether it didn't play out that way or not, because Surreal didn't call him in the octagon. Tom at least has brought us something. He believes in himself. He's big. He's got Michael Bisping vouching for him. I'm going with Tom.
Michael Bisping said he floats around the octagon like Muhammad Ali. I mean,
wow.
If he's floating around the octagon like Muhammad Ali and Sergey has to land a big strike on him, that'll be very difficult to do. So you might be right in your prediction.
Well, there's something to that when you're taking on those big power guys. You want to get a few minutes. You want to tire them out. I mean, that's just kind of the blueprint, very basic rule. I don't know that Tom has that skill. I don't know that he has the skill to get an underhook like, say, DC and push you into the fence and take a little steam out of you. So he's going to have to work here. But the odds do increase after the first round.
Michael Bisping putting a lot of pressure on his fellow Brit, Tom Aspinall, with these comments.
I called him last night, John. I had to call him like, hey, what are we doing here, man? Like, is this a gimmick?
Yeah, like, do you mean this? Are you sincere? I wonder the same thing.
Yeah,
he says he's going to go down as the greatest heavyweight of all time. First has to beat Sergey Pavlovich to keep that a reality. All right, I want to talk to you guys real quickly about some betting trend and sort of a new offering, relatively speaking, at DraftKings Sportsbook. Anybody who bets football and basketball, you know spreads, right? But now we have them in mixed martial arts. So featured bout here on pay-per-view, Jessica Andrade taking on Mackenzie Dern. So Mackenzie Dern on the money line, minus 198. Jessica Andrade is plus 164. But you can take Mackenzie Dern minus 3.5 points or Jessica Andrade plus 3.5. And let me essentially explain this to you. If Jessica Andrade loses 29-28 times 3 and you have her plus 3.5, she's lost on the judges' scorecards by 3 total points, but you get her plus 3.5. Reciprocally, if Mackenzie Dern is able to win 30-27, she wins the fight by 9 points on the judges' scorecards. Dern minus 3.5 is minus 145, a far better price than minus 198. I'm a money line guy. I'm a straight wager guy. I probably wouldn't be inclined to get into this, but a lot of people are taking advantage of these offerings. Just curious if you boys have any thoughts.
It's more opportunities, and if you believe that Jessica Andrade is still good enough to take a round off of Mackenzie Dern, which is likely, then it seems like a pretty safe bet. What I will tell you, though, is for you and the other guys that sit on Sundays and bet football and MMA, you had to have gone to betting university to be able to do exactly what you just did right there. Because that is not an easy thing to remember.
You definitely just spoke a language that not everybody will speak, but I will tell you this. When people come to DraftKings, it's because it's fun. How many times do you hear them say, it makes the game more interesting? I fully agree, but as far as having fun, that is the funnest line that DraftKings has offered yet. As far as having fun, as far as being able to look around the living room and tell your buddies, I told you so, you should have listened to me. That's the bet right there.
Just get around.
Yep.
Like you went around and you get me paid? Let's go.
When I retire from mixed martial arts commentary, I'm going to have a disgusting amount of action on that DraftKings Sportsbook app on every fight. You know, my kids are all going to state schools.
And sadly, you have an understanding that the judges can do anything. I mean, you're playing a whole different game when you play it that way.
Yes.
All right, so essentially, if you have watched our DraftKings Sportsbook betting preview in the past, you know that what we like to do towards the tail end of the show is put together a same-game parlay for you on the main event. So we have dissected this main event between Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka, and we have each come up with something that we like. Now, DC and I can't bet on a side, so I'll start us off. I'm going to go with over 50 strikes landed by Yuri Prochazka. I do think this fight trends longer than a round and a half. It's minus 115 right now. I think Prochazka is not going to look rusty. I think he lives the mixed martial arts lifestyle. I'm not suggesting he's going to win the fight, but I think he will land more than 50 strikes, which maybe infers that we hit a second or a third round. So I'll start off the main event same game parlay. Over 50 strikes landed for Yuri Prochazka. DC, And I like that this is plus money, plus 130. You like over 2.5 rounds in the fight.
I do, because I do believe that these guys both take their time in their approach. Maybe not Yuri. Yuri does attack very early, but if he does that against Alex Pereira, he's going to find himself in trouble because Alex is such a tremendous counter striker. He does such a great job of setting up his attacks that if you leave too many openings, he will get you out of there. Yuri will be very aware of that because he is the martial artist. He lives that lifestyle. He has studied this guy up and down. So he'll take his time, and because of that, I think it'll be at least 2.5 rounds before this fight ends, whatever side it goes to.
Sure. And I got a mouthful of compliments for Alex, but if I was to give one criticism, and it goes to kickboxers as a whole, they don't focus on the head movement as much. They'll put their hands up, and they'll allow themselves to be hit. I guess that's my point. I know that Yuri is going to throw 50 strikes. Can he land them? On most top strikers, he'd probably have some air balls. But with Pereira, who will let you touch him in exchange to come back with the counter shots, I think he's going to get the 50.
All right, so Alex Pereira by knockout is what you like right now. Can be had plus 120 on DraftKings Sportsbook.
And I like him in the third round, by the way. I think it's going to be a sloppy fight. I mean, I think they're going to use a lot of energy, but I think he's going to finish him in the third.
So that's essentially the parlay pays, right? Yuri gets the 50, 2.5 rounds. Chael gets the knockout. Get paid.
Hey, can I go one step further? Because if Pereira does get this done within this calendar year, he will have been the 85-pound champion and the light heavyweight champion. I think he's fighter of the year. I think he deserves to win the recognition if he gets this belt.
Hard to argue otherwise. I've been trying to contextualize him in combat sports. If he's able to add a double champion status in MMA after being a simultaneous kickboxing two-division champion, pretty big stuff.
In 3 years and only has 10 fights. He's 8-2.
Amateur. He's got an amateur record. Yeah. He's a world champion.
Yeah, it's nuts.
All right, so that main event same game parlay we laid out pays out at plus 550. Over 50 strikes landed for Yuri Prochazka. Over 2.5 rounds in the fight, and then Alex Pereira by knockout. Heavy hitters today. Outstanding job. This guy giving us a third-round prop on Alex Pereira by knockout. Extra credit there. If you want to get involved, now is the time to do so. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Not now, but right now. New customers use promo code HEAVYWEIGHT. Bet $5 on any of this weekend's fighters and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code HEAVYWEIGHT. Only at DraftKings. Thanks to everybody here in New York City. For Daniel Cormier and Chael Sonnen, I'm Jon Anik. We will see you live in the DraftKings Sportsbook application and, of course, on pay-per-view Saturday night.